A question for today, kind of a political one. What do you think it would take for Obergefell to fall like Roe did? What's it going to take for that to happen?
2 SCOTUS judges, maybe 1.
Now that's a scary thought, but he's completely off his rocker. But not me. I am quite comfortably in my rocker here, so let's have a chat. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, and especially to my patrons and channel members. Today we are watching Doug Wilson speak on matters he knows nothing about: homosexuality and the law. I also know little about homosexuality. Never tried it, never had any desire to. But live and let live. And I'll be damned if I will sit by and let others try to marginalize my friends. Doug Wilson is one of the most despicable pastors in the country. This is partly because his theology is one of the most despicable: Calvinism. The denomination that tells you that if you aren't a believer, that's because God doesn't want you, or at least he doesn't want you yet. If he wanted you, he would force you to believe, to love him, and to accept him. And knowing that at a minimum 2/3 of the entire world were all created to be vessels of wrath, created for destruction, created to be condemned to hell for eternity for the glory of God. It seems to me that if your God needs billions of people to suffer for his glory isn't worth your time or effort. And yet, despite that being the horrific God of the Calvinist, I bought into that lie. Why? Because I bought into that the Bible was the complete inerrant Word of God. And if this is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, there was nothing I could do except live with it. That is, until I realized that the Bible is anything but the whole truth. And if you really need a God, there are better gods out there. But I have no need of a God, so I landed at atheism. But enough about me. Wilson has made the claim that Obergefell can be overturned by 1 or 2 SCOTUS judges. Wilson's first error: there is no such thing as a SCOTUS judge. We have justices at SCOTUS, not judges. People refer to them as judges colloquially, but if you are going to present yourself as an expert, at least learn to talk like one. Next, a pair of SCOTUS justices cannot, nor can a single justice, decide a case. Now, we all know what he means. What Wilson means is that he thinks that if 1 or 2 justices can be swayed from their current position, the decision can be overturned. But again, if you are going to present yourself as the authority, then learn the language. But Obergefell is not as precarious as Wilson would have us believe, at least not in my opinion. Let's let him present his evidence, if he has any, and then get into the reasons why I think he's wrong.
Okay. You think that's all it's going to take?
Yeah.
Do you think that we does it do we have the political will? Because in order to get it before the Supreme Court, somebody's going to have to.
It's going to have to come up from some
red state is going to have to say, we're going to revisit.
And we are already there. Both Wilson and the interviewer are struggling to articulate what must happen to get a case before the court that could overturn the Obergefell decision. And the reason is because the circumstances for getting the right kind of case before the court are going to be hard to find. These guys, thus far, seem to believe that the first requirement is that the case come from a red state. They see the primary hurdle to be getting the court to rule that a same-sex couple can't get married, so the Supreme Court can take the case. Unless the state passes a law making same-sex marriage illegal, that cannot happen, which is highly unlikely, as most people support gay marriage, or at least are not opposed to it, even in red states. A 2024 Gallup poll showed that 69% of Americans think gay marriage should be legal. Wilson and his ilk don't care about democracy, don't care about states' rights, and don't care about people. All they care about is making their invisible friend look good, which is a tough road to hoe because no one can see their invisible friend. What does he even look like? Before one can bring the issue of gay marriage before the court, one needs to sue for having been harmed by gay marriage. Despite the claims of the ultra-right that gay marriage is harmful to straight marriage, they cannot demonstrate any straight marriage that has ever been harmed by the fact that gay people can also get married. There is only one person in the country that can make this claim, albeit a poor one, that she has been harmed by gay marriage, and that is Kim Davis. She has appealed the suit where she was sued for damages by plaintiffs that were harmed by her refusal to comply with the law. If you don't remember Kim Davis, she's the Kentucky licensing clerk who refused to sign marriage licenses for gay people. She doesn't believe in gay marriage and claims to be opposed to it for religious reasons. I say claims, because her religion also says that a divorced person cannot remarry, and yet she has been married 4 times. She also has 2 children out of wedlock. Believes in the sanctity of marriage, my foot. She was the only person in the clerk's office with the authority to sign marriage license. Thus, she could not just have a co-worker do the ones for gay couples. She fought for the right to refuse marriage licenses to gay couples and lost. When she was directed to sign the marriage licenses for gay couples, she stopped signing any marriage licenses for anyone. I don't even remember how many times she lost at every turn, but she was breaking the law and everyone knew it. She claims to have a right to qualified immunity from the lawsuit for damages from gay couples that were refused a license for being a government official. She claims her position should shield her from even claims against her for her personal capacity. The most recent decision on her case was by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals that ruled on August 11, 2025, that issue had been argued and lost twice. They ruled against her on all claims. Judge Helene White wrote the opinion of the court, which was a unanimous decision with one concurring opinion. She wrote, Davis's contrary view would subvert the Bill of Rights. As Davis sees it, a public official can wield the authority of the state to violate the constitutional rights of citizens if the official believes that she is following her conscience. That cannot be correct. The very purpose of the Bill of Rights is to place certain freedoms beyond the reach of government. But what is most interesting from this case is a footnote. Davis's lawyers raised the argument that Obergefell should be overturned. This was raised, according to the attorneys, only for the purpose of preserving the issue for appeal. What this means is that this was not argued before the court, but to get the issue before the Supreme Court, the issue must be raised in this case. When the Supreme Court takes a case, they decide only the case that was disputed in the lower courts. Litigants can't raise new issues on appeal. They can argue new evidence. They can raise new arguments, but only as to the issues that were raised before the lower court. In a footnote, White wrote, Davis also argues that Obergefell should be overturned. She acknowledges that this court cannot overturn Obergefell, but she asserts that she is raising the issue to preserve it for Supreme Court review. Ironically, however, it appears that Davis did not preserve this issue because she never raised it below. She did not argue that Obergefell should be overturned in her motion to dismiss, her motion for summary judgment, or her motion for judgment as a matter of law. Indeed, in moving to dismiss, Davis expressly stated that she did not want to relitigate the court's decision in Obergefell. This footnote is not binding, but it does signal the Supreme Court that this issue was not raised and is not ripe for appeal. Will the Supreme Court take up the case anyway? It's possible, but I don't think it will. It's not a good case. According to ABC News, most legal experts, and I do not count myself as one of those experts. I'm no expert, I just have a better than lay understanding of what's going on here. But most legal experts agree that this case is a long shot. As you have seen, Judge White does not believe that the issue has been preserved for appeal. But Davis did appeal to the Supreme Court on August 11th. If 4 justices vote to hear the case, cert is granted, and the attorneys will start preparing their oral arguments. This is likely what Wilson meant when he said that he thought it would only take 1 or 2 judges, as he put it. He can count on 2 votes to take this case. The court would need 2 more before the case would even be heard. Oral arguments are scheduled by the court to be heard from October to April. Thus, if cert is not granted by April, it is extremely unlikely to be heard that year. But there are other things that we need to consider. Let's see if Wilson raises them. If not, I'll discuss them after we hear from him.
This now,
Right.
and be able to get that through the legislature.
Right.
Do you think that's feasible, given how or do you think that people have sort of made peace with that aspect of it? They may not have made peace with some of the downstream fruit.
No, I think I think there are an awful lot of people who have not made peace with it, but they don't have a banner to rally around or a leader to rally around.
The host, he never gives his name, and Wilson are pussyfooting around what I was getting at. I have no idea why they don't just come out and say it. Perhaps they will in a minute. Perhaps it is because they are outside their area of expertise and don't know how the system can accomplish what they want. The law can be difficult to maneuver within. A better case to bring down Obergefell would be if a state passed a law banning same-sex marriage, and then a couple wanting to marry could sue based on the violation of their constitutional rights. The court in Obergefell found a constitutional right to marriage for gay couples. The ultra-rights argue that 1. It was not a unanimous decision. They're right on that point. 2. The 14th Amendment contains no right to marry, and they are partially right here. The 14th Amendment has long been used, as in since the Civil War, as a vehicle for determining that federally recognized constitutional rights cannot be denied to a person by a state. The 14th Amendment was the vehicle for finding that states cannot deny voting rights to black people, nor can segregation be permitted. It states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The Equal Protection Clause guarantees that all citizens in the U.S. have the same constitutionally protected rights. I am most eager to hear if the ultra-rights will argue that only gay marriage is not a protected right, or that all marriage is not a protected right. If the former, they would clearly violate the Equal Protection Clause. The ultra-right will make the argument that gay people have the same right to marry as straight people. They just can't marry a person of their choice. They must marry a person of the opposite sex. And note, I said sex, not gender. At one time when I was younger and stupider, I made this argument myself. It didn't work in Obergefell, and I don't believe it will work now. We'll get to that later. But are any states considering banning same-sex marriage? Not outright, but there are 9 states currently seeking to undermine the rights of gay people to marry. Some of these states are no surprise: Texas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota. The big surprise to me was Michigan. I was also surprised to not see my own state of Alabama on the list, nor Mississippi. In Michigan, State Representative Josh Shriver introduced a resolution that Obergefell should be overturned because it is at odds with the sanctity of marriage, the Michigan Constitution, and principles upon which the country was established. He claims Christians have been persecuted because of the law. His evidence: LGBTQ couples cannot be denied the right to adopt children by state-funded adoption agencies on religious grounds. In other words, religious organizations are no longer allowed to use their religious beliefs as a weapon against the LGBTQ community, at least not if the organization wants to accept state funding for adoption placements. If his God were real and had a problem with LGBTQ people adopting children, all his God needs to do is fund the organizations himself and stop taking taxpayer money. He has streets of gold and unlimited wealth. Why can't he fund the adoption agencies that allegedly support his views? His second evidence is that wedding venues face fines and harassment if they refuse service to same-sex couples. In other words, he wants the right to be a bigot. For all the complaining that the far right is doing about the rights created by the courts, one would think they would not be seeking to create a new right for themselves, namely, the right to be a bigot. Imagine if a venue refused service to Asian people. Your God sure doesn't seem to be trying to reach Asian people. Are you sure he's okay with people being Asian? I only say that to demonstrate how disgusting it is to deny certain rights to gay people. This isn't even controversial. 69% of Americans support the right to gay marriage. The resolution did not pass. Idaho began this trend, Wilson's home state, and likely spurred on by him. In Idaho, this resolution passed the House, but died in committee in the Senate. The resolution, even if passed, would have no effect. The resolution calls on the Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell, but the court has no power to do so without a case before it. The only case currently in the wings is a poor one, the Davis case, which likely failed to preserve the issue of the constitutionality of Obergefell for constitutional review. I personally don't even think Alito would grant cert for Davis. Her case is too weak. Better to save it for one that has a chance of winning, which to me says, at least not this year. A similar resolution passed in the North Dakota House but failed in the Senate. In South Dakota, the House deferred the bill to the final day of session, effectively killing it. In fact, despite these resolutions passing in some houses, no Senate has passed one. The Texas bill is different. It isn't a mere resolution. It creates a new type of marriage, allowing couples to enter a legally binding covenant marriage, requiring premarital counseling and limiting divorce grounds to issues like abuse, adultery, or abandonment, basically making a 1950s regulated marriage an option. This also died in committee. Louisiana, Arizona, and Arkansas have passed covenant marriage laws. Currently, only 1 to 2% of couples opt for this, as it offers no advantages, but makes leaving the marriage much more difficult. Oklahoma's bill did offer a tax credit for entering a covenant marriage, but that bill failed. The Tennessee bill proposes a direct challenge to Obergefell by limiting covenant marriage to heterosexual couples. I'm not sure anyone would want to challenge that. It would be like opposing being excluded from the option for a tooth extraction without pain medication. If the legislature wants to create a right to opt out of anesthesia during dental procedures, go ahead. Waste your time. Other than needing to be drug-free, I see no reason why anyone would choose that option. The caution is that if these states then want to make covenant marriage the only type of marriage available, I seriously doubt that this would pass, as this is harmful not only to gay couples, but heterosexual couples as well. I've been saying this for some time, and perhaps the people on the right one day might hear, but when no-fault divorce didn't exist, many couples that agreed they wanted to divorce would commit fraud on the court. One of the partners would confess to adultery in court, and then there would be grounds for divorce. My family law professor said that when one party was accused of adultery, there was either too much evidence of it or not enough. If the couples were in agreement on divorce, they offered excessive evidence of adultery. If only one party wanted a divorce, it was very difficult to prove adultery, even when it had occurred. The courts were sick of it. The judges knew what was going on, but they have to rule based on the evidence, and the evidence was overwhelming. It just made more sense to let people divorce if they want to divorce, and not waste the court's time with so-called evidence that everyone knew wasn't true.
I think that if some red state governor, Oklahoma or something, just took a stand and said, this is what we're going to do, I think a lot of support would come out of the woodwork for that.
I disagree. Even among Republicans, over 50% support gay marriage. And if a governor proposed to ban gay marriage in his state, there's no way it would pass. It isn't even likely to pass the legislature. Most lawmakers know that they would be voted out of office for passing such a bill. Just look at the massive failure in red states of proposals to the public for abortion bans. People are fine with gay marriage, for the most part. It's just the few stick-in-the-muds, like Wilson, that think that they should have the right to tell the majority what to do because they have God on their side. If they really had God on their side, let God speak up and say so.
I think it's a function of Paul saying, if when the bugle blows indistinctly, no one gets ready for battle. Mm-hmm. We don't have anybody in the top tier of Reformed evangelical leadership saying Obergefell must go.
Why Reformed theological leadership? First, your Reformed theological leadership is vastly diminished as of late.
I think it is time we inform the Senate that our ability to use the force is diminished.
You've lost Sproul, MacArthur, Keller, and though he wasn't Reformed, he was a political ally, James Dobson. You and Piper are the only ones left. Okay, you have Wayne Grudem too, but I'd be willing to bet that in my audience, few, if any, have ever even heard of Grudem. And Piper tends to stay out of politics in the limelight. He isn't going to rally people to a cause of getting rid of same-sex marriage. Since your God is in control of everything, according to your theology, and nothing happens that he doesn't want to happen, he's fine with gay marriage. He wanted gay people to marry. Further, your Bible tells you to obey your government, and this is the law of your government. So clearly, your God wants you to get out of his way. This is his plan, God damn it.
Mm-hmm. And I think we need to be, I know you're doing it, Delenda est. But I think there's got to be a lot more of that.
I don't even know the name of the guy you were talking to. He clearly has no influence if he can't even reach me, someone who is actively looking for people on your side.
We need to pray that God would raise up a standard bearer who would say this actually is critical.
Why? Why is this critical to you? What is this doing to you? Nothing. To your congregation? Nothing. To your God? What difference would that make? Can't your God take care of himself?
And then and should we have the same mindset? So the folks who went after Roe all those years ago, they probably at the time didn't think it would take that long,
right?
Because there was a bunch of false starts. Mm-hmm. As when it got to the Supreme Court, they doubled down and tripled down and things mm-hmm. like that. So it took 40 years or 50 years. Do you think that we ought to have a similar take the long view? So from the outset, take the long view of we're going to have to do work to persuade people that this is really, really bad.
Before you can get there, you need some evidence that it is really, really bad. The fact that that's the best you can do in framing your question runs counter to your claim. But I get where he's trying to go. No one had a problem with abortion until it was framed as murdering babies. Of course no one wants to murder a baby, but you can't do that with gay marriage. No one dies. No one gets hurt. There is no harm.
Right. We have, yes, take the long view, but at the same time, we should have learned something from round one that enables us to not make some of the same mistakes.
Okay, like what?
Like back in the 80s when Reagan was president, there was a big division in the pro-life movement over whether we should fight it with a constitutional amendment that would outlaw abortion in all 50 or repeal Roe.
Constitutional amendments are very difficult to pass. It must be proposed by the houses of 2/3 of the state or by a national convention called for by 2/3 of the state. We never did pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Right now, the country is so polarized that 2/3 of the state wouldn't be able to agree that the grass is green, especially not in Kentucky. If Democrats say anything, no matter how obviously true, Republicans will oppose it.
Yeah, and make it 50 state battles.
Which is where we wound up now.
Yeah.
But the story is told, and I think it resonates with me. There was a big gathering of pro-lifers at the White House with Reagan there, and squabble, the tactical division broke out, and they were just at each other. And Reagan got up and left and said, "When you guys figure it out, let me know."
Right.
Right. Okay. So I think we ought not to get in a swizzle with people who want the same thing that we do.
I'm not sure that you can get Trump on board with you. He's too busy with his pet agendas. There's no money in it for him. Why should he care? He doesn't support any rights for LGBTQ people, but I doubt he'd go out of his way to support you. It would cost him too much politically.
So we should guard against that kind of mistake. So perhaps it would take not as long to get to that point.
Because you would say the best kind of tactic at this point is we got to take out Obergefell rather than try to get a constitutional amendment defining marriage as one man and one woman.
Right.
That at least to me sounds pretty out of reach.
Well, way out of reach, because you have to get 3/4 of the states to ratify it, which is not going to happen. It's conceivable that you could get one state to do the radical thing.
Did you catch the admission? Outlawing gay marriage would be a radical thing. You could conceivably get one state to do the radical thing, but not 3/4. You need 2/3 of the states on board just to call for the question, and then you need 3/4 to ratify the amendment. That isn't happening. Joe Biden passed the Respect for Marriage Act, which repealed the Defense of Marriage Act and made all marriages, whether gay, straight, interracial, or whatever, valid in all states. This made it impossible for a court ruling to make a person's marriage invalid. So even if the conservatives brought down Obergefell, current marriages are safe. But bringing down Obergefell would be quite the blow. It would deny equal protection under the law to any who don't fit what that court comes up with as a marriage. I don't think they will win, but the stakes are high, so we also can't afford to sit and wait for their next move. We need to be on top of this.
And, of course, that would go all the way up the food chain to the Supreme Court. And it's conceivable that you could get one new Alito on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so if you had a justice who would basically do the same thing they did with Roe, which is this is not a constitutional question, this is a legislative question, and then they would kick back to the states, and you'd have, it'd be a really interesting fallout because of the recognition challenge.
Of course, this is exactly how Obergefell came to be law. Massachusetts was the first state to legalize gay marriage in 2002. The law that a marriage legal in one state is legal in all was recognized under the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution long before gay marriage was legal anywhere. It's why a common law marriage in Texas was legal in Wisconsin, even though Wisconsin doesn't have common law marriage. It's why people went to Las Vegas to get married, as there was no waiting period for a marriage license there. Even if Obergefell were to be overturned, if gay marriage is legal in only one state, all states must recognize the marriages that take place there. It would create marriage havens. But why? Why would you do this? I seriously doubt that they have any reason other than they don't like it. But why should these two men be allowed to force their personal preferences on the rest of us?
Right. You'd have, if you had 5 or 6 or 10 states saying no way, no how, and then everybody else is passing laws saying you betcha.
Yeah. It's still untenable. Can two walk together except they be agreed in Amos? And it's untenable because of the full faith and credit clause of the. So if you have a driver's license in Maryland, you can drive in Oregon.
Right.
Well, if you're married in Maryland, are you married in Oregon?
Yeah.
He got that part right. Bringing about the fall of Obergefell and kicking that to the states for determination doesn't do much. It just means gay people have to travel to a state where gay marriage is legal and get married there, as it was from 2002 to 2015. Not allowing gay people to marry in some states makes no sense. You could make a better case for abortion. The abortion opponents who see the unborn as viable humans can make a case for protecting these microhumans that live within their state. No such case can be made concerning gay marriage. The state has no interest to protect. It can claim that it is protecting straight marriage, but there is no evidence that allowing gay marriage causes any harm to straight marriage. They can claim that they are trying to raise the birth rates, but preventing gay marriage doesn't boost birth rates. If gay people don't marry, they have no children, unless they adopt. And it's no different for a gay couple, except that children raised by gay couples fare better than children raised by a single parent. So if anything, the state should have a vested interest in protecting, not destroying gay marriage.
And that's...
So something would have to get worked out there.
Something has to give some time, some way.
Yeah.
And it's got to be all 50 at some point.
And that he can never do. With 69% of Americans in favor of gay marriage and even over 50% of Republicans, there is no way that all 50 states are going to agree to ban gay marriage. The only possible way to achieve that goal is to force it upon an unwilling public, to get rid of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Looking at tearing down our democracy and installing a dictatorship, are you?
But what's the most strategic way of getting there? I don't think it's trying to take all 50 all at once.
Right. And then in terms of the kind of persuasion that you think, so there's the folks who are already convinced, but I look around and I see, even among, the Trumpism has made peace with gay marriage. So, I remember even J.D. Vance saying, we're going to try to win the normal gay guy vote.
I wasn't aware of that. Cool. Can you now admit that what you want isn't happening? This is even more of a when pigs fly kind of thing. But more importantly, when you know that even your own people don't agree with you, why do you think it's important? What evidence do you have that it isn't you that is out in left field?
How would you go about trying to move that needle, especially because I've done interviews on my Sin of Empathy book with conservative outlets, and when I bring up the push for Obergefell as an example of empathetic manipulation, I've had a number of them jump in at that point to say, well, I just want to make it clear that I'm actually okay with that.
Good question. Doug, you got anything?
One of the thing that basically made Roe more accessible, the overturning of Roe more accessible, was the invention of the ultrasound, or the not the invention of, but the development
and the widespread
use of the ultrasound.
Yep, they used that to convince people the unborn were microhumans. So what's your plan here? To do the opposite? To try to convince us that gay people are not people? God, I hope that isn't where he's going. I hope he isn't going to go full-on Nazi on us. And now I know who our host is, Joe Rigney, author of The Sin of Empathy, the man who wants to turn morality on its head by declaring virtue to be vice and vice virtue. Would we expect anything less from the denomination that tells us that their God knowingly creates billions of people to fuel the furnace of his wrath? Could a religion be any more despicable than this?
People, now what this did is, okay, you've got this gestation period, and here's the baby at 8 months. Okay, that's a baby. But people think in terms of sequences. They'll go back, okay, when did this baby get here? Well,
When did it become a baby?
When did it become a baby?
Do my ears deceive me? Do the advocates for having no empathy, who have declared empathy to be a sin, are they now advocating that one have empathy for the unborn? Have you gentlemen, and I use that word very loosely here as I have been skipping over some very offensive language, forgotten that you have declared empathy to be a sin? Why would anyone who cares not for the feelings of others care about the unborn? You have shown yourselves to care for none but pasty white straight men like yourselves.
Sexual autonomy. That's what you're looking at.
Right.
Well, am I not looking at that
Yeah.
with homosexuality and lesbianism?
Okay.
No, I'm looking at sexual autonomy.
Right.
And that's the enemy.
Sexual autonomy is the enemy? Seriously? What on earth do you want? Controlled sex? Controlled by who? Who gets to assign the sex partners? You? Is this nothing more than you wanting to choose for yourself the virgin girls that you are to keep, just like your Bible says? Do you not see the massive potential for abuse here? No one has more sex scandals than the clergy, and you want the clergy in charge of assigning people sex partners? Wilson doesn't want to send us back to the 50s. He wants unfettered power for himself, but he'll share a bit with his friends so that they will support him. Women, gay people, children, the LGBTQ community, black people should all be running as fast as they can go from this guy. I pity your wives, gentlemen. I really do. I pity all the people in your congregation that have to put up with this crap week after week and are too blind to see that they're in the deepest shit that this world has to offer.
And sexual autonomy has heterosexual forms, serial polygamy and polygamy, that's heterosexual. But it's again, lawless and autonomous.
Consent is part of sexual autonomy too. Is consent not required? Please answer that one.
And then how valuable do you think it is to re-stigmatize certain things? So part of it seems to me that part of the way that the play got run was sanitizing the language. Do you think it's important to re-stigmatize certain behaviors, reawaken kind of the disgust, their gag reflex?
Yeah, the ick factor. Yeah, I do, because the whole thing was that Will and Grace sitcom, which I never saw. But
I never saw Will and Grace. I only know the content, but no, I never watched it. Methinks the lady doth protest too much.
But it was like, let's normalize. Every sitcom has to have a
funny gay guy.
A winsome gay guy in it, and that was a propaganda move that worked.
In other words, people came to realize that gay people are people, just like everyone else. But we don't want that. We want gay people to be seen as something other than the normal people that they are. My God, these guys are disgusting. That's really the end. They sneak in another slur that I have omitted, and yes, I reported this video for its hate content. In summary, these guys want to overturn Obergefell, but at least for now, I think it will stand strong. The only case in the wings is a weak one that likely didn't even preserve the constitutional question. No one else in the country has standing to bring a suit to overturn Obergefell, as no one has been harmed by gay people having the same right to marry as straight people. If we make it to April without a case being taken up to challenge the constitutionality of Obergefell, it should be safe for at least another 2 years. Legislation at this point is a potential threat, but so far, the haters are losing. This video is all you need to know about Doug Wilson and friends. They want to dehumanize some people. If their God were real, this would be the worst of all possible worlds. Fortunately for us, their God isn't real, and they are but a very small minority. Love one another, respect bodily autonomy, and hold close all your friends in the LGBTQ community. Right now, they need all the love and support we can give them. Live your life.